Well, good morning. We're ready now to make the shift. The process that had taken several decades of grooming Louis, the person, the body, my communication device, had come to fruition by the end of 2008. That process of healing, of development, transformation had been complete. So Louis found himself back in Minnesota. He decided to settle in Stillwater, first staying with his best friend, Robin, and then eventually finding his way. He had a small gig as a chef in a nursing home across the river in Wisconsin. But the important thing was that Louis was fully on his mission of service. He wasn't any longer actively facilitating classes in A Course in Miracles, but he had a new idea for a class that had started back when he was still down in Asheville, focused on Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, the evolution of consciousness. So he was facilitating this class. Robin was in the class, as well as a woman, Cindy Sinclair. And it was interesting that Louis was curious about Cindy. She'd shared some things about her life. She lived on this renovated farm, built back in the 19th century, turned it into a flower farm, and slowly it was becoming a venue for weddings, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Louis just was invited by Cindy to come visit her, have the class in her kitchen with a little fireplace. Very, very, very lovely place. And this was in the winter. So they're sitting by the fire and having a chat. And it just sort of struck Louis to ask Cindy if she was interested. He made a proposal that he could work for her as like the property manager. Louis had his experience with plants, landscaping. So he could be like the caretaker of Camrose Hill, name of her property, working half the year from early May until early October, which is basically the growing season in Minnesota, and then take the other 6 months to begin his exploration, because Louis realized after his adventure looking for a place in USA, Asheville, North Carolina, Sarasota, Florida, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, that it wasn't happening in USA. And so Louis just had the sense that he was supposed to head south. He had this idea, and actually he had been just for a few months the previous winter. When he was in Florida, he parked his car, left his things with some friends in Florida, and flew down to Costa Rica. And so it occurred to Louis that Latin America was going to be a more open, favorable, supportive environment for Louis to eventually find his OASIS Center for Conscious Living. So he offered this proposal to Cindy. She accepted. Louis could fashion an apartment in this old barn. And basically live for free and save all his money. that he would earn with Cindy over the year for travel expenses. So, so this began a lovely process that they had made an original contract idea for 5 years. You know, Cindy liked the idea of having someone long-term, not having to find new help every year. So Louis committed to that. And they began. So I'll share some photos of Camrose Hill. It was kind of like Amherst, Massachusetts had been. It was a real cocoon, a real lovely place. For Louis to be, to live the simple life. You know, he said he had this place in the barn, he had electricity, but no running water. So part of his ritual every day was to walk down to the well. It was like 53 steps. So Louis even had this little mantra about the 53 steps, just again, focusing on chop wood, carry water. It was lovely. This would become a real core part of his personal spiritual practice, chop wood, carry water. And as it turned out, a big part of his job, other than mowing the lawns and tending the gardens, was harvesting firewood. There were a lot of box elder trees there that grew very fast, and these things really needed to be cleaned up. So that was a big part of the job, was cutting down trees or cutting up fallen trees and stacking wood and drying it. So the weddings in the summer, and each year, I mean, Cindy's business really grew. I think the first summer he was there, she had like 8 or 10 weddings, and by the time he left 6 years later, she was up to 40-something weddings every summer, basically 2 every week, at about a 20-week season. So it was quite a thing. So that was Camrose Hill, and then Louis' exploration. He went back to spend a full winter in Costa Rica, and the following year, first in Costa Rica, then he went to a little bit of time in Ecuador, spent some time in Colombia. The next year, he spent the full winter in Colombia. Again, just realizing, especially now that he was in South America, that there was really something to South America that appealed to him a lot, and especially the Andean highlands that began in Colombia, went all the way down through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina. He was very drawn. He had written this book in 2008 about the vision that he had, sort of guided by me to visualizing the last 100 years of Homo sapiens as a species. And so, and when he was researching this book, The Third Pulse, he was intrigued. He actually called the event of the Beatles, 1967, Summer of Love, the event, the one world presentation of all you need is love. Anyway, he saw that as like the second pulse. There would be these three strong pulses that started in 1932, 1967, and then in the future, in this period from 2019 to 2032. Anyway, they just mentioned that during the writing of this book, this is when he did the research on the Beatles, and he was struck by this one particular album that had Here Comes the Sun. Also had this short little cryptic piece, Here Comes the Sun King, that people at the time were talking about if you played it backwards, you know, it was sort of a very intriguing bit that they planted in this album. And of course, the Beatles being what they were, Louis really saw them as being this very powerful portal through which this energetic pulse would come. That would be, you know, the beginning of this new earth that would again fully blossom 50 years later. But when Louis researched the Sun King, he just thought, what are they referring to? And he looked it up, and the first most popular use of the name Sun King was with Louis XIV, King of France. Louis was intrigued with that, did a little research on Louis XIV. Turns out they share the same birthday, September 5th. And so it just kind of resonated with Louis, like, wow, okay, some coincidences here. I guess I would use this name, Sun King, because it was becoming clear to Louis, especially teaching Eckhart Tolle, that, you know, again, his function, any human's function, the highest function, would to be a conduit, a portal, a bridge between heaven and earth, and that being that one of Eckhart's most brilliant contributions was naming God the unmanifested, and this to me